She doesn't know why, but she thinks about you. There's no logic, no objective justification. It's not because of a message you sent or something you said. And that's where the secret lies, because the true power of attraction isn't in what you see, but in what you feel without explanation. A name that appears out of nowhere, a face that returns without warning, a gesture that reappears in the memory like a recurring figure. What makes this happen? What activates this invisible force that puts you in her mind without direct effort? The answer lies where almost no one dares to look. In the gap, in the unfilled space, in the mystery you leave when you refuse to be deciphered. The human mind is a problem-solving machine, but it is even more obsessed with that which it doesn't understand. And when the object of desire doesn't give itself, doesn't explain itself, doesn't complete itself, it becomes unforgettable. The French philosopher Jacques Lacan said, "Desire is always the desire for something that is missing, and what is missing becomes a constant presence." When you reveal too much, explain too much, give everything away right at the beginning, you kill the enigma. And without an enigma, there is no fascination. Without fascination, there is no recurring thought. Most men believe they need to win her over through excess presence messages, compliments, attention. But excess reveals, and what is revealed too much loses value. The man who explains too much is the same one who fades from her memory, because what is too obvious does not need to be remembered. It is resolved, and what is resolved is discarded. The secret is to be an unfinished narrative, a book she started reading but could not finish, a film that cuts off before the climax. You do not want to be understood, you want to be interpreted, and interpretation generates obsession. Cleopatra was not remembered only for her beauty, but for her mystery, for the rumors, for the unfilled spaces around her presence, for the decisions that seemed contradictory, for saying a lot with little. Ancient Greece already understood this. What attracts is what cannot be explained in a simple way. And even figures like Marilyn Monroe, who seemed obvious at first glance, contained layers that no one could fully access. This mix of accessibility and unattainability creates a kind of tension that holds her. You are there, but never completely. It is this never completely that makes her think of you again and again and again. Robert Greene in The Art of Seduction states that the deepest power of seduction is psychological, and that mystery is the main weapon of any master. When she feels like she knows who you are, but at the same time she doesn't. When she believes she has read you, but each interaction reveals a new detail. When she thinks she understands, and then you do something that contradicts everything it is. This controlled contradiction that generates the echo, the mental noise, the emotional trail. It is like the soundtrack of a film that she cannot forget, even without remembering the lines. And then you realize that being desired is not about being present, but about being absent with meaning. The secret that makes a woman think of you for no reason is not what you do when you are with her, but what you leave behind when you leave. A silence charged with presence, an absence that vibrates, a gap that she will try to fill with memories of you. You don't have to do more, you just have to do it right, at the right time, and get out of the way before she can predict your next act. The silence you leave behind is not just any void, it is fertile ground where her imagination begins to build castles. But what if, in addition to the mystery, you could plant small emotional devices inside these castles' invisible anchors that make your name emerge in the middle of the afternoon, in the middle of traffic, in the middle of nowhere? Because the real game begins when you understand this. Remembering is not a choice, it is a reaction, and every reaction needs a trigger. The problem is that most men try to provoke reactions using logic, explicit words, obvious compliments, promises. But her brain, and especially her body, does not respond to logic. It responds to what is sensory, to what touches deep emotions, to what activates a memory she didn't even know she had. Have you ever listened to a song and suddenly felt a chill for no reason? Did you feel a desire for someone, for someplace, for a time that will never return? That is an anchor. It is the connection between a sensory stimulus and a strong emotion. And you can become just that in her mind. A sound, an image, a tactile sensation that awakens longing even if she doesn't know exactly what it is. Great seducers understand this. They don't speak to impress, they say things that come back like an echo. They don't try to please, they create an impact. They stimulate the sense of smell with the right scent. They play with intention, not in a hurry. They use pauses in their speech as if they were beats in a song. You don't need much. You need something that sticks, a phrase that only you would use, a gesture that is your signature, a look that she can describe but can't explain. Imagine, for example, that you are on a date. Instead of asking, "What do you do?" you lean over and say, "Do you know that there is something in your eyes that gives me the feeling that you have lived more than you seem, that you carry storms disguised as calm?" It's not about complimenting, it's about creating an internal dilemma, about activating memories and feelings that she herself may have repressed. Phrases like these are like emotional mirrors. She sees herself in a new way and associates it with you, and her brain, which loves meaning, will start to create connections. Each time she sees herself more deeply, she will remember who made her see herself that way. This is what Neil Strauss called planting mental loops. When you activate an emotional feeling associated with you, that emotional memory starts to be revisited, even without your presence. And that's the real game. She may even forget what you said, but never how she felt with you. And it's that feeling that comes back when she hears a similar song, when someone repeats a similar phrase, when another guy's perfume reminds her of yours. You become an emotional ghost, a memory with shape, smell, texture, and heat. And the more you use these triggers subtly, the more powerful they become, because she doesn't realize what's happening. And when there's no awareness, there's no defense. The power of sensory anchors is that they bypass the rational mind and speak directly to instinct. She doesn't think, "I miss him." She simply feels it. The desire ignites on its own, and in that moment, you've won. But the anchor alone doesn't work if you don't know when to disappear, because the stimulus needs the silence afterward, the space to grow. And that's exactly where the next step of the game comes in, the one that the weak fear, but the strategist masters. You don't disappear because you've lost interest, you disappear because you understand the game. And the real game isn't winning her over while you're with her. It's making her want you back when you've already left. This is the theater of disappearance, the art most feared by the insecure, because it requires timing, courage, and the strategic coldness of someone who knows the following. Desire isn't born from constant presence, but from the absence that bothers, the absence that generates emotional emptiness, the absence that screams. Here's the brutal truth. When you disappear after leaving a deep emotional impact, you're not moving away. You're multiplying yourself inside her. With every minute without a response, she replays phrases, she remembers touches, she reinterprets gestures, and the more she thinks, the more space you take up. You become a recurring thought, and that's exactly where the new sexual power lies: mental power. Robert Greene once said, "Make yourself present through absence." He understood that human beings can't stand emotional gaps, and that's why they try to fill them. But not every gap can be resolved. Some can only be felt. Disappearing strategically is not ghosting, nor is it cowardice. It is positioning. It is mastering desire. It is knowing that your greatest value lies in what you leave behind, not in what you insist on delivering. You are like a mysterious painting in a silent gallery. There is no sign explaining it. There is no instruction manual. You only provoke a reaction, and those who react remember, and those who remember desire. But there is a critical condition. You can only disappear after creating emotional dissonance. In other words, after causing her to be in a state of pleasurable confusion, a moment in which she feels something she does not yet fully understand, something she wants to repeat, decipher, relive. And then, right at that point, you withdraw. You do not respond right away, you do not explain, you do not confirm interest. You disappear at the exact moment her brain asks for more, and you leave the stage empty. That is theater. That is the scene that never closes. Most people make mistakes because they want to fill that space with words. He wants control. He wants guarantees. But the true seducer understands that real control is the opposite. It means elegantly provoking emotional chaos. It means leaving questions hanging, unfinished sentences, conversations with gaps, a good night that never came, a last look that never ends. She enters a mental loop. Her mind wants to understand, and it can't. And the more she tries, the more she turns you into an emotional reference. This is how men who dominate the game become obsessions, not because they are the most present, but because they know how to disappear when you most expect them to stay. Because desire grows in the interval between the sentence and the response, between the touch and the disappearance, between the "I want more" and the nothing that comes after. This is timing. This is control. This is elite seduction. But of course, this requires courage. Courage to lose immediate control in exchange for absolute control later. courage to resist the urge to guarantee, courage to accept that the strongest in the game is not the one who runs after it, but the one who knows when to turn their backs at the peak. Because only then will you become the kind of absence that cannot be tolerated, the kind of silence that screams louder than any message. And then, when she is distracted, busy, involved with someone else, the name that will pop into her head for no reason at all will be yours. Not because you insist, but because of strategy. Because you understood the rule that no one teaches. Those who disappear at the right time do not disappear. They become eternal. Seduction is not a straight line. It is a spiral. Every time she circles back to you in her thoughts, the spiral tightens. But the spiral only turns when there is unfinished tension, when a story is left mid-sentence, when a feeling lingers without closure. Closure kills desire. Mystery sustains it. Think of every great work of art, every unforgettable story. What makes them immortal is not what is explained, but what is left unsaid. Da Vinci's Mona Lisa is remembered not because of her smile, but because of the question it leaves unanswered. Shakespeare's tragedies endure not because we know everything about the characters, but because they reflect contradictions that can never be resolved. Seduction works the same way. Most men rush to deliver answers. They seek certainty. They want to be understood. But what truly magnetizes a woman is not the man who explains himself. It is the man who cannot be fully explained. He is simple on the surface, yet layered underneath, the way a piece of music reveals new emotions each time it's heard. The unfinished tension is what keeps her searching for you, replaying moments in her mind like riddles. A glance that seemed accidental but wasn't. A sentence that felt like it had two meanings. A silence that felt too heavy to be empty. Every unsolved fragment becomes a loop in her memory, and every loop ties her to you more tightly. The weak man tries to resolve tension because he cannot bear uncertainty. The strong man creates tension and then walks away, knowing that desire does not live in satisfaction, but in hunger. The paradox is that you do not win by giving her more, you win by giving her less, but giving it in a way that cannot be forgotten. She does not long for completion. She longs for continuation. She does not crave to know you fully. She craves the pursuit of knowing you. The more you leave unfinished, the more she finishes it for you in her imagination. And her imagination will always make you larger, deeper, more intoxicating than anything reality could provide. That is the art of unfinished tension. To be remembered not for what you gave, but for what you refuse to give.